Gearbox have taken a very unusual stance with access to pre-launch review copies of Borderlands 3. They seem to have been cherry-picking a few select outlets for access. Jason Schreier of Kotaku isn't happy. Also, one of the reviews is so low that some of the Borderlands fans aren't happy. Here to chew the fat with me is Mr. Henry Cooper.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, however this finds you.
Set us up, Henry. What's this all about?
Borderlands 3, upcoming first-person shooter, looty game coming out on Friday the 13th, ironically, amidst all of this extra drama. And generally, when a company has a game coming out, they'll send out review codes to media outlets, the big ones, so they can play it, and then let us, as a body of consumers, know exactly what's good and what's bad, so then we can make an informed purchase. However, this time, 2K Games, the publisher behind Borderlands 3, have taken a slightly different approach. So instead of sending out a code or a physical disc, they've created accounts for these outlets to then go onto the Epic Games Store and play there. Okay, that doesn't sound too weird, a bit convoluted, but the game they're playing isn't the actual game that comes out on Friday. It's an early pre-release build, and a number of outlets have noted that it's full of bugs. You may be wondering why on earth you would do that. So are we.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like the smartest thing to do. But naturally, Jason Schreier, journalist for Kotaku, he's not happy, and he's quite keen on letting the world know when he isn't happy. He's a good source of news, whether it's good or bad, we'll leave that up to you. So I first came across this on Twitter, where he posted, instead of sending out Borderlands 3 review codes, publisher 2K set reviewers up with special Epic Games Store accounts that included early builds of the game, and they wouldn't give access to certain outlets, including Kotaku. Very weird situation.
Do you think he's more upset that he didn't get access to the game?
He's definitely a little bit bitter.
He thinks he's a quite important figure in the industry, let's say, and maybe he deserves access above everybody else.
I'm a game reviewer with a little check mark next to my name on Twitter. That means I'm entitled. No, you're never entitled to a review code of a game, no matter how big your outlet is. But that's not to say that this isn't a weird situation. So in the article, which he links in his tweet, he says, rather than sending out codes for the game, 2K gave reviewers special Epic Games Store accounts loaded up with early, work-in-progress builds of Borderlands 3, a bizarre scenario that we've never seen before. And he goes on to reference Polygon's review. They did get an account to play the game on the early build of the game, and it mentions a number of things like a number of technical issues like crashes and the game just completely giving up on what it's trying to do. 2K Games and Gearbox didn't send out review codes for Borderlands 3. Instead, they set reviewers up with new Epic Store accounts with the game unlocked and gave us a few warnings about the game being a work in progress. They asked us to stay away from the DirectX 12 implementation, for example, and told us that our progress in these builds may or may not carry over to the final game.
This is problematic, right? This smoke here, right? And usually when there's smoke, there's fire. What this indicates is that the game isn't quite ready, isn't quite polished. The fact that they're not able to give the reviewers final versions of the game. This is like a preview type of event setup where you'd get like journalists in a couple of months beforehand, let them play a preview build of the game. It's not a final build, just like a hands-on, just so that they can test it out. This isn't a review version of the game that they're reviewing, which is weird. Why aren't they doing that? That's the question.
Yeah.
And it stinks to me like the game isn't quite ready for launch, but this is an industry which is games as a service heavy, and it's very common for games not to be ready at launch. Is that the case here? I'm not saying it is. It just smells like it.
My main question is, what are 2K hiding? Why have them play on the build which everyone knows is a work in progress, so it's going to be buggy by its nature because it's not finished yet? Why make them play on that one? Why not give you the real one? Because that's what the public will be playing.
That's the question that it leaves in our minds, that's for sure.
But to be honest, this is certainly not the first controversy around Gearbox and Borderlands and 2K, because they've had a bit of a time of it recently. So I'll go through the greatest hits, if you will, of controversies associated with Gearbox.
And Randy Pitchford.
Mr. Randy Pitchford, CEO of Gearbox, he's pretty much right at the front of every single one. So there's the Randy Pitchford porn leak, where he left a USB stick at a medieval times restaurant, which had, among other things, cam girl footage of a barely legal 18, that was her brand, she was barely legal, and secret corporate documents, which you certainly don't want to just be leaving around in a medieval restaurant. Then there's Randy Pitchford versus Wade Callender, the former Gearbox lawyer. I feel like this is like a boxing match lineup.
Yeah.
Randy Pitchford was accused of alleged bonus siphoning. So the bonuses that should have gone to the regular employees, he was accused that maybe he was
putting them into his personal account.
Yeah, his magic business, which he's got on the side. Then there's Randy Pitchford versus David Eddings, the original voice actor for Claptrap, and he alleged that he assaulted him in the lobby of a hotel. Then there's Randy Pitchford versus Troy Baker, and Troy Baker, one of the two male voice actors who do everything in the games industry these days, he was replaced showcased for his role as Reese in Borderlands, and he wasn't told. He saw the trailer and was like, oh, well, there's my character, but I'm not in it. And Pitchford alleges, oh, we asked him, but he didn't want to do it, but Troy Baker says otherwise. And then there's Randy Pitchford versus the definition of microtransactions, where he said at the Borderlands 3 gameplay reveal event that there will be no microtransactions, none of that free-to-play junk or anything, but there will be cosmetic microtransactions, and of course that's not a microtransaction.
You don't call them microtransactions.
It's a bit complicated, that one. Then there was the Epic exclusivity drama, which, I mean, we've all heard 100 times by now, but he tried to wash his hands of that and tried to say, please direct all inquiries regarding any of those topics to 2K. It's like, it's nothing to do with me, we're fine. And then later on said, you know what, I think exclusivity is great, it's good for the industry. And then the most recent one is 2K sending out private investigators to a YouTuber's house to essentially bully him into not doing anything.
Not leaking stuff on YouTube like he was supposedly doing.
Yeah, leaks that were publicly available information that 2K didn't hide.
There's so much associated with Randy Pitchford. This is just a snapshot of the most recent ones. Yeah. Oh my God, Randy, never leave the industry.
Please don't.
We love you.
So what do the reviews actually say? Is it good? Is it bad?
It's currently sitting at an 85 on Metacritic based on 20 critic reviews. So that's as many as they've given out. There's a few in progress, but I've picked out a couple specific ones. We don't have a huge array of reviews to look at today. So I've picked out a couple of specific ones. One very high score and one the lowest score pretty much. And so we can analyze them together and have a look, see if they appeal to us or they resound with us. Okay, so the first one, Paul Tassi of Forbes. I like Paul Tassi. There's a bit of a background, a bit of a general bio on him. He's generally a voice of the people, and he likes to call out bad monetization in games and shitty microtransactions and shit like that. He's one of the good guys in terms of that type of thing, in my opinion. He's a fan of the loot shooter genre. He plays Destiny religiously. He covered a lot of Anthem. He has spent a lot of time playing the previous Borderlands games. He's a self-proclaimed Borderlands super fan, and he says himself, having devoted frankly absurd amounts of time to playing multiple playthroughs and multiple characters in the first two games. I think that type of context is really important when you're summing up how people think about a certain thing. So with all that known, he loves loot shooter games, and he's put loads of time into Borderlands. With that mindset, you know how relevant his 9 out of 10 score, which he gave the game, is, right? You see how much how important that is, right? So if you're kind of similar-minded, you might have similar feelings to him. So I've picked out a few of his quotes. What is perhaps the most surprising about Borderlands 3 is how little things have really changed since Borderlands 2. There are no shared social spaces, no always online instance worlds. It's just a lot more Borderlands with improvements bolted on wherever possible. Talking about the story and the setup, he said, this is where Borderlands 3 feels pretty identical to the last two. It's the same structure. If you appreciated Borderlands humor before or didn't, nothing has really changed. It's not really as over the top as I imagined it would be, though for a script full of jokes, there aren't a ton of outright laughs. But now we arrive at where Borderlands 3 is different and better than its predecessors' gameplay. Movement is totally transformed through the addition of just a few simple mechanics like sliding and clamber. Shooting just feels better. All the guns feel fantastic to use, and the epics and legendaries especially are a blast. The loot so far is great. Borderlands 3 does not feel like a total transformation for the series, just an evolution, and that may leave some part of it stuck in the past, but overwhelmingly it's a game that's still a blast to play, particularly for those into the loot shooter genre. I think few fans of the last two will be disappointed when they get their hands on it at last, and I think that's a fair summation of a game and how you'd kind of expect him to see the game. 9 out of 10 is a fantastic score. Let's get that straight, right? One of the games of the year. If it's 9 out of 10, you'd have thought. Borderlands 3 comes in, I think, at the right time. It's going to appeal to a lot of people, and it definitely appeals to Paul Tassi. So moving on, this is the more controversial one. This is the PC Gamer review by James Davenport, and he gave it a 63%. People are not happy about this. Like,
people who haven't played the game yet.
But our fans of Borderlands have taken to Twitter, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. But a little bit background on James Davenport. I don't know him as well as I did Paul Tassi, but in his own words, I enjoyed Borderlands 2 a lot, but still thought the humour was grating, though less so than 3. Didn't dig the pre-sequel, loved Tales. He's reviewed a few games for PC Gamer recently. Man of Medan, don't know how to say that. 81% he gave that. He controlled review at an 88. Wolfenstein Youngblood at a 79. So that gives you a snapshot of the recent games that have come out, and if you felt kind of in the same ballpark as him, maybe that gives you some insight as to whether you might feel the same way as him on Borderlands 3. So he obviously didn't like a lot of this, right? So the tone and the humour is his biggest criticisms, let's say, and he said the following: Borderlands 3 walks by dog poop, points at it and laughs and then sets it on fire. It's stuck in the late 2000s when surface level vulgarity was enough to qualify as edgy. Borderlands 3 is seriously obsessed with turds.
A turd in the wind.
If you like that type of tone, that sort of childish, like poop jokes, toilet humour tone, then it's going to appeal to you as Borderlands 3. And it gives a few examples of some of the quests that he had to do in the game. A few quests. I collect brown rock specimens, or poop, for a guy obsessed with brown rock specimens. Poop. Claptrap needs help building a friend who is clearly a feminine robot for his creepy private purposes. I plant dynamite in a massive poop dam to save a farm. I help a guy open a burger joint while he yells about burgers a lot. I help a guy escape from a porta potty for a poop spewing rocket launcher. It's borderline unbearable. It's stuck in a time when memes lasted months rather than days, when referential humour was still novelty and not exhausting, when you could point at something the slightest bit abnormal or gross and call it a joke. The favourite line of the whole thing. Borderlands 3 reads like teenage lunch table improv circa Austin Powers 2, The Spy Who Shagged Me.
Oh, behave!
I mean, if you didn't know what the humour was going to be in the game before that, this really does a good job of pointing out exactly what the tone of the game is going to be like. Whether you share the same sentiment as him, whether you're going to like it or not, that's up to you. But you know exactly now what it's going to be like, right?
So I've never been a big Borderlands fan, partly because the humour doesn't really do anything for me. It's a bit cringy and whatnot, but the gameplay's still fun.
Talking about what's fun, some of the things that he did like about the game: the environments, new locations are a welcome change of scenery from the muted deserts of Pandora. Also the weapons, obviously one of the biggest plus points in the previous review and in this one. I've yet to tire of watching loot rain down from defeated enemies, the signal light for something I haven't seen before. Wild gear is the reason to play Borderlands 3, and the guns, as expected, are its fervently beating heart. To kind of offset those two things, what he did like and he didn't like, he said, it's simultaneously repulsive and compulsive. I have horrific whiplash.
Whiplash.
Again, I like that line. He's got whiplash.
Got a good turn of phrase, this chap.
I like it. So on the villains, he didn't like them at all. The new big bads, the Calypso twins, are murderous live streamers whose motives and histories only become clear in the final act. Until then, they're just two cartoon villains who take up beef with the Vault Hunter. There's not much more to them besides long, obnoxious monologues about how much I suck. There are few genuine jokes, dramatic beats, or interesting character moments in Borderlands 3. Towards the end, he says, between the bugs, the extended non-jokes, the self-aggrandizing jabs at game design trends, and a few cameos I won't spoil but that made me audibly groan, Borderlands 3 has a lot in common with Gearbox fan events as of late. There's a lot of loud, extended posturing while holding what everyone really came for hostage. It's a shame because Tales from the Borderlands found a delicate balance of absurdity, self-awareness and genuine heart. A better Borderlands is possible, but just not Borderlands 3. He has his opinion on it. I mean, it's not something to get upset about, right? He's obviously made his own judgment, and that's part of what reviewers do, I guess. But talking about getting upset, people on Twitter have already started taking to him because he's the outlier,
no way.
Right?
This doesn't happen.
Yeah. Borderlands 3 has 85 on Metacritic, majority of which are 8 or 9 out of 10, right? His is the outlier at 63. He doesn't like something very specific and he didn't have a good time with a lot of it, right? But people are upset because he didn't like it. He tweeted first, proof that nothing means anything. Been called a boomer about 4 times today because I wrote a video game review, probably referencing the fact that he didn't like the humor in it.
Because it's like contemporary millennial hip humor and you don't get it, so you must be that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So someone chimes in after that, Jack Seabert. People are critical of your review because A, its jokes seem to be the focal point of your dislike for the game, and B, by all of the measures, the game seemed to stack up pretty great. You seem to weight the jokes between 2.5 and 3.5 points. And he replied, the jokes suck major ass and are impossible to ignore. The story is vapid and boring. Some old frustrating design decisions persist. It's not just the jokes. Did anyone read it? Does anyone realize that 63 is still a recommendation just with bit caveats? Now this is talking point, right? 63, he says it's a recommendation, but there's a caveat to it, right? Is 63 in this day and age reach a decent score. Like,
yeah, you're right. By today's standards, most people don't care. If I see something that's a 6, I'll be like, oh, okay, that's maybe a look in a while, not like a rush out and purchase type job. A 7 is like, okay, I'll put that on my list. An 8, oh yeah, I could buy that right now. A 9,
yeah,
I need it immediately.
I think a lot of the scores are condensed in that 6 to 9 range, right?
Yeah.
You'll see so many games in that range. Maybe even 95% of the games get rated between 6 and 9 or 10, right? There's not much room in the 1s to the 5s, right? So that means nothing. Anything between 1 and 5 means just don't play it. It's shit, essentially. But back in the day, right, a 63 on a PC Gamer, which is the magazine I used to read, it wasn't really that bad. And the point is that you have to read the detail of a review. The review scores don't mean shit.
That's why if I ever do a review, I don't put a number on it, because that's all people will see. You could make 100 intelligent points, but as soon as the number comes up, that's all that matters.
There you go. This last guy says, it's funny because this guy was pleading with him to change his review. At Perny_ says, considering it's a 40-hour game at max, the instances of this would be 1 to 2 missions max. Perhaps you are tired of games. In all honesty though, please reconsider your review. At least keep it at a 70 to 80% range. Come on, man. The game's not above average. It's more than good, at least. I just don't get this. Like, this guy's pleading for him to change the score of a game he's never played.
Yeah.
Really? Because you like the game? You're just trying to defend your game? It's like, can't you just accept that someone else has got a different opinion?
Although none of these guys have played the game because they got to play the early version because it's 2K.
How important are review scores? That's one thing that is out. Are they that important to you that you would go to Twitter just to attack someone or to comment against someone who negatively reviewed a game you liked or a series that you liked and you've never even bloody played? I think it's just symptomatic of the whole, everything can be criticized. Any creative thing that you can do in the world these days will get criticized no matter what you do.
And just for those who aren't clear, although I believe it should go without saying, don't go and harass these people just because they've rated a game lower than you believe it should or higher than you believe it should. Leave them alone, let them have their opinions. Disagree, by all means.
Yeah,
but don't attack them.
Just like we disagree with the way that 2K are hiding the reviews, because reviews are really important for consumers in a way that you need to know what the game plays like before you buy the game. If you're selecting a small handful of reviewers that you've cherry-picked in order to review, obviously they scored an own goal with the PC Gamer one. They didn't see him coming, did they? We might see these reviews level out at around the 80 or 79% mark, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case because they've cherry-picked these reviews. I don't like that, right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to control this information. They're just trying to get the best impact at launch for people to see the best reviews at launch. It's manipulation is what it is, and it sits bad with me.
Well, anyway, those are just our thoughts on the Borderlands 3 review situation and 2K being the classic dodgy 2K games that they are. But make sure you let us know down in the comments what you think. Are you planning on picking it up, or have all of these controversies and bullshit that surrounds Borderlands 3 put you off buying the game for yourself? Make sure to let us know, leave us a like, hit the subscribe button, go on over to patreon.com/prettygoodgaming if you want to support the content we make. I've been Henry, he's been Gaz. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.